Every family has its secrets, but mine turned betrayal into tradition. It happened on Christmas. Wine glasses clinked, smiles were fake, and then my sister stood up and said the words that shattered everything. "We voted, and you're cut off." Everyone nodded like it was nothing, but what they didn't see were the years I carried them, financially, emotionally, silently. I was their fixer, until that night. Things aren't always what they seem. What would you have done in their shoes? Comment 1 if you want part 2. If you've ever wondered what happens when the scapegoat finally says enough, let me take you there. It didn't start with that wine glass. It started years ago with a quiet expectation that I would always show up. I was the one they could depend on, because I made myself dependable. When my father needed an unexpected dental surgery, it was me he called at 6:12 a.m., asking for just a little help, honey, like I had volunteered. When Mom needed to cover a mysterious charge from a store I'd never been to, she said, "Just this once," with the kind of tone that wrapped guilt in affection. I was the family ATM, the emergency contact, the emotional sponge for every crisis they didn't want to face alone. Rosen, my sister, the one who would later lead the charge to exile me, once came to me in tears, claiming she couldn't afford therapy. I paid for 6 months up front. I didn't know until later that it wasn't therapy at all, but a luxury energy healing retreat in California. Neva's tuition? Covered it. A canceled scholarship, they said. A rough patch, they said. No one ever offered to pay me back. No one even asked if I could afford it. They assumed I could and would. And for a long time, they were right. I thought that's what love meant. That if you loved people, you showed up, even when it hurt, even when they didn't say thank you, even when they turned their needs into your obligations. I wore responsibility like a badge of honor, not realizing it was slowly choking me. They told me I was the backbone of the family, but I didn't understand that being the backbone meant carrying the weight, even as they broke me one piece at a time. My silence was seen as strength, but really, it was survival. The kind of silence you learn when speaking up only leads to more manipulation, more gaslighting, more isolation. So when Christmas came, and I arrived early, thinking maybe this year would be different, I should have known better. I brought a bottle of wine from my personal stash, wrapped it in a bow like some kind of fool still hoping for peace. And when Rosen stood up with her glass, when she said they'd voted, and I was no longer part of the family, it didn't just break my heart, it clarified everything. Because they didn't vote me out that night, they'd been slowly erasing me for years. That was just the first time they said it out loud. And for the first few seconds after Rosen's declaration, I truly thought it might be a joke, maybe a poorly timed attempt at Christmas drama, but then I looked around. No one laughed. No one looked confused, not even surprised. Mom buttered her roll like it was just another Thursday. Cale stared at his plate, refusing to meet my eyes. Neva giggled. She thought it was a game. Dad didn't even flinch, just shifted in his recliner and mumbled something about tension not being healthy. The air didn't erupt. It froze. A silence colder than any shout settled in the room. It was the kind of cold that doesn't cut you. It settles in your bones and makes you feel like you were never really warm to begin with. I should have stood up and walked out. I should have cried, yelled, begged for answers, but I didn't. Instead, I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the folder I'd been holding on to for months. A thick, heavy file, paper evidence of every moment I had swallowed for the sake of keeping peace. My heart wasn't racing anymore. If anything, it had slowed, like my body had been waiting for this moment. I placed it on the table, the dull thud louder than anything said that night. "What's that?" Rosen asked, her voice still laced with that smirk she wore when she thought she'd won. "Since we're being honest," I said, "I figured I'd come prepared." She grabbed the folder like it was a party game, expecting maybe a dramatic nothing. But as her fingers flipped through the pages, the smirk faded. Page after page of bank statements, text logs, email threads, times they'd begged for help, the dates, the amounts. Every sacrifice I had quietly made, laid out in cold ink. Then came page 23, a hotel bill from Charleston, 2 nights, Ocean View Suite. Signed under her name and someone named Lena. Rosen's hand jerked back like the pages had burned her. "You psychopath," she spat. "You've been spying?" "No," I said calmly. "I've been documenting. There's a difference." Cale pulled the folder toward him, flipping through the evidence. His mouth moved, but no words came. The room had gone painfully still. Then Mom spoke, voice sharp with accusation. "How dare you weaponize your help like this?" I looked her in the eye, colder than I had ever felt. "You called it help," I said. "But to you, I was just an ATM, a guilt sponge, a convenient scapegoat." Then I stood. They said I wasn't family, so maybe they wouldn't need me as their fallback anymore. No tears, no begging, no second chances, just me, my coat, and the storm outside. Because if they were finally showing their truth, it was only fair that I showed mine. I walked out of that house with no plan, no destination, just a cold certainty that I would never step foot in that space again, not as the person they used to manipulate. My boots crunched against the frost-covered grass like it owed me something. I was halfway to the street when I heard her, Rosen, shouting behind the door that had so politely clicked shut after me. "You think you're better than us?" I didn't turn around, but I heard the folder hit a wall, papers scattering like dry leaves in a fire. "You're a damn parasite, On!" she screamed. Then silence. Then Cale's voice, low and steady. "Who the hell is Lena?" I turned, just slightly. Just enough to see him holding the folder now, flipping through the evidence not with shock anymore, but with intent, searching, connecting. "Don't do this here," Rosen snapped, but her voice had lost its edge. I said, "Who is Lena?" Cale repeated, no louder, just colder. Mom stood abruptly, trying to shut it down. "This isn't the time or the place." "The hell it isn't," Cale snapped. "You all wanted honesty. You clapped when she was cut out. Now we're being honest." I didn't stay to watch the fallout. I didn't need to. I recognized the sound of a carefully built lie collapsing under the weight of truth. It wasn't loud like fireworks. It was quiet, sharp, like glass cracking slowly under pressure. My phone buzzed, a voicemail from an unknown number. "Ms. Adams, this is Ewan from Marlowe and Fisher. Your father asked me to reach out regarding the family trust." I hung up. It rang again immediately. Same number. "Ms. Adams," he said, polite and firm. "Your father believes you're still listed on fallback clauses, including power of attorney." "Not anymore," I replied without hesitation. "He insists you may still need to manually revoke Clause 14B. He's asking for a meeting." I laughed, not from amusement, just a short, bitter exhale. "Tell him I don't hold that power anymore," I said. "And even if I did, I wouldn't lift a finger." "Understood. Would you like us to notify him in writing?" "No, let him stew." I ended the call and stared at the street ahead. A few houses down, a plastic reindeer blinked its red nose on and off, mocking me with its cheer. Behind me, the house had gone eerily quiet. Not peaceful, just stunned. And still, no one came after me. I kept walking, past the mailbox, past the house, until the adrenaline settled and all that was left was clarity. I didn't go home. I drove without direction until I ended up by the lake, Dad's old, peaceful place. I sat in the stillness, watching the water turn to glass beneath the moon. And for the first time in years, I felt something I couldn't name. Not freedom exactly, not yet, but something like the start of it. That quiet by the lake held more truth than any family dinner ever had. No accusations, no expectations, just stillness. I sat there for what felt like hours, letting the cold settle into my skin, not fighting it. I wasn't angry anymore, not in the way I used to be. I was just done. Not defeated, just emptied of the need to prove anything. 3 days passed like breath held too long. I didn't go back to work. I barely left my apartment except to walk the dog and let the silence stretch. Asheville had turned bitterly cold, the kind of cold that cracks your skin and makes your bones ache. But somehow it felt better than pretending things were fine. At least the cold was honest. Then Senna texted, "Let's meet. Just us. No pressure." I stared at the message longer than I should have. My first instinct was to delete it. My second was to reply, "What do you want now?" But curiosity, fool that it is, won out. I picked a neutral cafe tucked into a quiet street. Public enough to prevent a scene. Private enough that no one else could watch me pretend I wasn't still bruised. She was already there when I arrived, wrapped in a cream coat, hands wrapped around a lukewarm latte. Her eyes were soft, too soft. "I'm glad you came," she said, voice smaller than I remembered. I didn't sit, not right away. "Let's not waste time." She nodded, then reached into her bag and slid a manila envelope across the table. "It's paperwork," she said. "Legal stuff. Power of attorney. Dad wants to reinstate you. We figured if we got this out of the way, we could talk easier." I didn't touch it. "So, this is what you meant by no pressure?" I asked flatly. We're all tired," she whispered. "You've always been the capable one. You understand how these things work. We were scared." I leaned in, my voice like steel. You don't get to cut me out, clap about it, and then put me back in when it's convenient. She looked away. It's not like that. It's exactly like that. I pushed the envelope back toward her. You want me for damage control, not love, not family. She said nothing. I'm not your legal shield, I said, standing. And I'm definitely not your emotional one. That night, I couldn't sleep. My phone buzzed once. Cale. I owe you an apology, he wrote. I saw what Rosen was doing. I said nothing. Told myself silence was neutral. It wasn't. It made it worse. Another message. You weren't crazy. You were just alone. I stared at the screen for a long time. I typed thank you, then deleted it. Locked my phone and lay in the quiet. Just before sunrise, another message. This time, Rosen. You've gone too far. If something happens to mom or dad, it's on you. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't about family. It never had been. It was about control, and they were losing it. That realization didn't bring me joy. It brought resolve. I no longer wanted revenge. I wanted release. So that morning, I made coffee, my hands steady, even as a hairline crack formed in the mug. Then I sat down and did what I had avoided for years. I told the truth out loud. I opened the family group chat, typed out 5 different versions of a message, deleted each one. Nothing felt like enough, until I stopped trying to explain and simply recorded my voice. I am not your villain, I said. I am your consequence. I let that sentence hang in the air before continuing. For years, I stayed silent because I thought holding the family together mattered more than telling the truth. I let myself be drained. Financially, emotionally. You called it help, but it was never mutual. It was expected, demanded. And now that I've stepped away, you don't want reconciliation. You want control back. I ended with one final line. If you try to twist this, threaten me, or smear my name again, I will go public. With everything, every receipt, every message. I am not bluffing. I hit send. No drama, no debate, just a calm, decisive end. Hours passed, then a message from Branwyn. I didn't know it was that bad. At first, I assumed she meant someone else. Then came another. I'm sorry for clapping. I thought it was all for show. Rosen said you were leaving anyway. Mom said you'd given up. I didn't know what to believe. It wasn't a full apology, but it wasn't wrapped in guilt either. For the first time in years, someone sounded sincere. If you want me to speak out, I will, she wrote. I didn't respond, not yet. But something in me softened, just a little. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, alone but not lonely. My hands shook, not from fear, but from the weight lifting off. I whispered it aloud just to hear it in my own voice. Maybe I was never the quiet one. Maybe they just never listened. The next morning felt different. The silence was no longer heavy, it was clean. I boxed up the remnants of my old life, changed legal documents, updated emergency contacts, scrubbed shared accounts, passwords, anything that tied me to them. By evening, the only thing left was a red sweater my mother had given me years ago. It said, "Love you always," on a stitched tag inside. Ironic, considering she called me selfish that same year for not co-signing a loan. I donated it on the way to the store. Then came the final act. I opened the family group chat one last time. My number stays the same, I typed, but you'll never reach who I used to be. Then I blocked them all. 3 days of peace followed. Real peace. Then the messages started again, from unknown numbers. Photos of the living room missing presents. Sentences like, "Never cried all night. We're behind on the mortgage. You went nuclear. Why would you do this to your own family?" Not one "I'm sorry," just guilt, wrapped in concern, but I didn't answer. Because I finally understood they never wanted me healed, they just wanted me manageable.